Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video I'd like to discuss something that should be unthinkable. Tory MPs may actually have to replace another leader, and possibly fairly quickly. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So it's ridiculous this, isn't it? It's ridiculous. Finally got rid of Boris Johnson. The public sigh of relief there. Great. Can we have a serious Prime Minister, please? We get Liz Truss. 3 weeks later. Yeah, can we have another one? We don't really like this one. It's not doing it for us. I mean, never mind what I think of the situation or what the government are doing to the country. I'm on the left. I'm a strong critic of any Conservative Prime Minister. But even by the standards of the Tories, of Tory MPs and former Tory MPs, Liz Truss is a disaster. After days of silence, she carried out a series of radio interviews this morning. She was monumentally awful in a way that only someone like me, who'd seen her at the dispatch box as a cabinet minister of many years, could have appreciated. Remember what I said over summer? Tory strategists, pollsters were finding that the more people knew about Liz Truss, the less they liked her. The issue is that most people, even though she's been a cabinet minister for some years, they didn't really know a lot about her. They didn't know a lot about her. She was largely not allowed to do media interviews. Apparently Dominic Cummings basically banned it while he was in charge. Now they're having to listen to her in radio interviews. You know, those who knew what she was like, though, because we had paid attention to her, we knew it would be disastrous. That being said, the Prime Minister can't simply remain silent during a national crisis. She was asked questions for which she had no answer. And I mean literally. I don't mean that her answers were nonsense. I mean that several times, to several different types of question, she was asked the question and then was silent. The gears turning while she tried to work out a response. Because she couldn't work out an answer on the fly and she hadn't done her preparation properly. She knew what the questions were going to be. Why? Any politician worth their salt would have the answers worked out. It might not be the answers the journalist wants. It might not technically answer the question. They would have a response. She didn't. She's not prepared. She's not clever enough to get through. She was defending the indefensible and she just wasn't able to brazen her way through it. I said this ages ago. Boris Johnson was the master of bluff and bluster. He would talk crap, but he would talk. I said that in Truss's brain, it's incapable of emulating this remarkable talent for using 1,000 words to say nothing at all that Johnson had. I've seen it so many times before in parliamentary debates, in the media interviews she was allowed to take part in. She falls down every time. She gets stuck. She doesn't know what to say. Labour's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, said today that Liz Truss had finally broken her long, painful silence with a series of short, painful silences. And she linked to the radio interviews. Unedited. She didn't take... You know, sometimes someone shows a clip and then someone else will go, oh, that's taken out of context. She just posted links to the whole interviews. Full context. This is the deputy leader of the Labour Party linking the members of the public to what the Prime Minister, the Tory Prime Minister, has had to say without any further comment. How bad did you do in those interviews that your opposition want the public to hear it? You know, correspondents were saying that even Truss supporting MPs described this morning's interviews as an utter shit show, as if they were surprised. But the most surprising thing for me was not her uselessness in interviews today. That was predictable. Everyone knew that was going to happen who'd ever listened to her before. It was Sam Coates reporting for Sky last night that Downing Street did not see the emergency action from the Bank of England yesterday as a response to their budget statement last Friday, but due to international issues. It's always international issues, isn't it? Always international issues. Now, it's one thing to lie. It's one thing to say that. But Coates was reporting. He didn't report it as Downing Street were saying it was due to. You know, he was saying it as if they believed it, as if it's fact. You know, if that's the case, it means the heart of government, both the Prime Minister and the Chancellor and all of their political advisors are behaving as if their budget hasn't actually caused the problem. And if you really believed that, of course you wouldn't reverse your budget. Why would you? But the measures were in relation to the budget. Yes, the dollar's gaining a lot of strength right now. People quite happily show you graphs of the dollar gaining, everyone losing against the dollar. That's an issue for everyone, of course. But the pound lost out to every currency. The other currencies have been losing over time against the dollar, as ours was. Ours is the only one that went vertical after Friday. Against the major currencies, all down. Down against the US dollar. Down against the Canadian dollar, the euro, the ruble, the Japanese yen, the Chinese yuan, the Indian rupee. All of our major trade currencies. These are all currencies that we trade with, that we import and we export with. Never mind that the dollar is rising against everything. Yes, that would be a problem, as it's a problem for everyone. It's a problem for the USA as it happens. But we're losing against everything, not just the US dollar. The Financial Times, they're not talking about the crisis being caused by an out-of-control dollar, and they're certainly not saying that the markets are spooked by a future Labour government. They make it crystal clear it's caused by uncosted tax and spending cuts. And they represent financiers, speculators, investors, not people. Well, they're people as well, but not the people. You know, they are the mouthpiece of the markets. So this is unsustainable. I did say that Tory MPs would ideally like to pin the blame on Kwarteng, get him sacked. It's never forever. Minister can always come back after a discrete period, but let him take all the blame, then get Truss to change direction. From what we've heard so far, this doesn't seem to be her plan. Her current course is unsustainable. I've seen people express surprise that the Tories are polling on 28% now. Not because it's so low, but because they can't work out how it's even that high for them. Well, it can go lower, and it will go lower on the current trajectory. Boris Johnson surprised, many with... He lasted way longer than he should have done. And people couldn't work it out. And it wasn't because he was a great political escapologist. It was just because the Tories were bereft of credible leaders. Johnson should have gone way before he did. He caused a massive amount of damage to the party. But too many MPs couldn't work out who to replace him with. That was always the argument. When it came time... After last December, it was quite clear he had to go. But so many Tory MPs would go, yeah, but who do you get rid of him with? Who do you replace him with? Look around you. Who do you replace him with? In the end, they decided literally anyone would be better than Johnson. They were, of course, wrong. And it's not that they were wrong to get rid of Johnson. They had to do that. Where they messed up was in replacing him with someone even worse. I can well imagine lots of Johnson loyalists were the ones voting for Truss, knowing full well she would crash and burn. But the thing that saved Johnson for so long was not having an obvious successor. But that's not going to save Truss, because they know they do have better leaders than her available. They just unfortunately failed to support them during the contest. The main thing protecting Truss is not the worry there's nobody to replace her with, but the absolute clown show it would be to paralyse government for a second time during national crises. Doesn't take a crystal ball to see how Labour would spin this one. Ignoring the work of government while they focus on their own internal squabbles. So lacking in leaders that they have to keep chopping and changing them. And the best protection for Truss is the fear that, yes, the Tories made a mistake in replacing Johnson with Truss, but they may make another mistake in replacing Truss with Johnson. The things that caused them to drop Johnson are still there. He hasn't changed. He famously boasts about not being changing, never changing. He hasn't learnt lessons. He boasts about the fact he doesn't learn lessons. And the public haven't forgotten what he did. According to all political wisdom, the Tories are now stuck with Truss until the next election because the alternatives are so incredibly damaging. That being said, we're getting to a point where a Truss government is more damaging than all of that. If they force her out, the public will see the Tories as being in chaos, riven by infighting. That is probably less damaging than supporting Truss. If they force her out and Boris Johnson replaces her, and remember that Privileges Committee investigation is still going on, that's likely to turn up more damaging revelations in time, then the public may see the whole thing as a scam to get Johnson back in all along. The decision to elect Truss might be seen as a deliberate con trick by Johnson loyalists to save him. And it might not be that far-fetched a notion. But even looking like they've conned the public might be less damaging than leaving Truss in charge. You know, get Boris Johnson back, lose the next election. Keep Truss in charge, lose the next 3. If she's genuinely refusing to see the link between her actions and consequences, if that's not just for the public, if that's what she genuinely thinks, what choice do they have? They are fast approaching the situation whereby they will find it impossible to win the next election. But it's not binary, like I say. If they really mess up, if something happens really bad, the Conservative brand could become toxic for voters for a generation. Let us be clear about the current trajectory of a Liz Truss government. Never mind the international ridicule, we had that with Johnson. This week, 40% of all mortgage products have been pulled since Friday by lenders. That means of all the financial products for mortgages that existed when at the start of last Friday morning, 40% of them don't exist anymore. They've been pulled because interest rates are likely to be highly unpredictable very soon. The market is betting on them increasing to just over 6% by next summer. That'll mean many unfixed mortgage payments become unaffordable. People just can't afford it. That means repossessions. Now, would the government step in to stop that? Well, they're fully committed free market Tories, aren't they? So that would be dead against their beliefs in interfering in the free market. But that means loads of Tory voters being kicked out of their homes. And it's not just the ones evicted who will be very sore about this for a very long time, but their friends and their families. Can you imagine them ever voting Tory again? Inflation's going to rise even higher than forecast, but the government are actively working against income rises. That means even the middle classes get squeezed and plunged into poverty. Loads more voters who won't forgive the Tories. I could talk for an hour about the domino effect of what the Tories have unleashed here. As with Brexit, they're charging full throttle at the cliff edge. Only this time, there is no significant portion of the swing voter base that's behind the moves. If Truss will not change course, Tory MPs have no option but to get rid of her. You could argue it's not imminent at the moment because as long as nothing disastrous, really disastrous, like the pension fund market disappearing up its own arse yesterday, for example, as long as something like that doesn't actually happen, the public haven't yet seen the consequences. There's plenty of reports about the consequences. Tory MPs know what the consequences will be, but those consequences haven't hit yet because this budget hasn't been implemented yet. So it's all recoverable for now. There will come a point where it's not. And yes, there may be some Tory MPs who support her moves. They might not mind Labour winning the next election and being left with the mess. But that's a risk. They risk leaving Labour with easy short-term wins that will solidify their popularity. If they really trap Labour on the economy, if they really hamstring them, they potentially force them into that electoral reform that I'm hoping happens anyway. Besides, after 3 years of a Tory economic skipfire, are the public really going to blame Labour for any difficulties they have in the first couple of years in dealing with it? No. Most Tory MPs are not winning with this government. Those who care about their own seats will have to fight for them. Those who care about the party can see that they are maybe days or weeks away from a tipping point that freezes them out of power for 10 years or more. As insanely damaging as it would be to get rid of Truss, it defies all political logic that they can get rid of Truss, especially this year, especially in the next few months. It may be that if she really proves to be incredibly inflexible, that it is less damaging to do that than to keep her. Look at the damage she's done in 3 weeks. Imagine what she could do in 3 months. There's another budget coming in November. Even Boris Johnson blinked when the situation blew up. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.